First and foremost, the most important takeaway with either one of those cases is that we can't allow sensationalism, we can't allow drama, we can't allow media or social media coverage to overshadow the loss of human life that was involved in either one of those cases. And a second, more operational takeaway is that we need to address the failures that were highlighted by either of those two cases, and we need to give it the seriousness and the attention that those failures deserve. Failures, for example, like failing to properly vet conflicts of interest amongst investigators.
See, I believe working collaboratively and not having one person make a decision, that'll prevent any of the overcharging or undercharging that occurred in Norfolk County. In September of 2024, the first assistant that I used to work for retired from Norfolk County. I was asked to take over the homicide cases for the office. The first thing I did was I created a group of lawyers, police officers, and victim witness advocates that would evaluate every new case that came in to make sure that we were never going to overcharge and make sure we properly indicted every case.
There's a twofold issue, I think, with that particular trial of Karen Reed. There is the over-indictment, the second trial, but from the recent communications that I read, there seems to be conspiracies to obstruct justice. There's criminal harassment and certainly witness intimidation. And as district attorney, I intend to explore the possibility of charges when I get into that office. In regards to Sandra Birchmore, again, similar issues with how the Karen Reed prosecution was handled. There was a medical report, examiner's report, and the conclusion that it was initially ruled as suicide. And my question is, how many pairs of eyes review that? Who made the decision to accept it on face value that it was a suicide and not a murder? And how it came about where the U.S. Attorney's Office delved further into their investigation and determined that it was a murder. But it does lead me to begin to think that it was, again, a systemic failure of the DA's office in lack of skill, lack of experience, and certainly lack of responsibility, that the case was not properly investigated, and it required the federal government to come in to do so.
I think the biggest takeaway from both the Karen Reed, John O'Keefe, and Sandra Birchmore cases would be that when there's a conflict of interest, especially when it involves law enforcement, it's real important to either take those people off of the investigation or, in the very least, grab some independent prosecutors who don't have any connection with these police. A big issue and the biggest takeaway from Karen Reed is that, Michael Proctor knew the people who he should have been investigating. Biggest takeaway from Sandra Birchmore is that Matthew Farwell had close personal connections with these police officers and state troopers and the district attorney's office, all people who should have been investigating him, and in my opinion failed. So
the first lesson of the Karen Reed and Sandra Birchmore case is that the district attorney must be someone who is a professional prosecutor. I believe that much of the reason for the mistakes in both of those cases is because the district attorney was a politician and not a professional prosecutor. I think the second lesson we take from that is that we must put victims and witnesses at the center and service of everything we do as an office, because that is what was lost in the perspectives of both of those cases. And then the third thing, I think, the third lesson that we take from this is that Norfolk County, our community, has a problem with misogyny, with racism, and homophobia, as we saw in some of the decisions made by the district attorney not to prosecute the Sandra Birchmore murder, and also in the text messages that we saw from Trooper Proctor.
So these two cases, I think, raise one key theme, and it's what I've been calling a two-tiered system of justice in Norfolk County, where if you know the right people or if you're connected to certain members of law enforcement, you've been able to get special treatment. That should never be the case, and under my leadership as DA, it won't. But in both of those cases, I think regardless of what you think happened in the case of the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the death of Sandra Birchmore, what you saw were police and prosecutors taking shortcuts, rushing to judgment, and drawing conclusions before collecting all the evidence. Under my leadership as district attorney, we're going to follow the facts and the evidence no matter where they lead or who they implicate. That's what I've done in my career as a federal prosecutor, and that's what I'm going to do as the next district attorney here in Norfolk County.
Karen Reed case, I don't know Karen Reed, just for the record, never met her. But what I saw was a incompetent and corrupted investigation. So to me, no citizen, nobody should ever be charged based on an investigation that is compromised like that. But it happened. So all of those mistakes could have been prevented if the elected district attorney had kept the assistants on a tight leash and not let them convince him that this was a good thing to keep going forward with.